So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. It's education and politicians. No one's willing to step up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here on lifestyleradio.ca as well as at Spreaker. Tonight's my joint host is Alison Myrden, and before we bring our guests in, I'm going to have a little wee talk with Alison. Alison, you there?
Hey, how's it going, Internet world?
It's doing good. It's doing
hey,
good. Alison, I talk to you about once a month here on the radio show. Otherwise, I don't see you a lot because the two of us are pretty busy people. So I just thought I'd check to see, ask you what you've been up to lately.
Well, Al, just in case everybody is interested, funny enough, I am usually, again, fairly active here in Canada. Health condition or no health condition, MS or no MS, it doesn't stop me. I've got a little joke that I don't have MS, I am a mess, MESS, and I have no time for nonsense. Anyway, but ultimately, I was asked by a young fellow, another medical patient named Neil Hanneman, and another medical patient who goes by the name of Stitch Grady, to come up and had a protest on Parliament Hill on this coming Monday, July 11th, 2016, in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, our nation's capital. And again, as most of you, or many of you might know, I'm very familiar to Parliament Hill, having spoken there over a dozen times in the Charles Lynch press room, and a number of things, again, that have been keeping me busy and active in that, definitely that city. So again, I'm looking forward to going to Ottawa. There's also going to be some sort of demonstration on the Sunday. The details, again, are a little sketchy for me right now, but I know those of you that are interested, definitely check out the link for a cannabis protest on Parliament Hill in Canada.
Good.
I'll definitely be there, and I hope you will too.
Yeah, get as many people out there as possible.
That's the plan, dog.
Lots of room on the hill, man. Lots of room on the hill.
Betcha,
now,
lots of room.
Just quickly, before we bring in the guest, did you see the news? I'm assuming you saw the news on the task force?
I sure did, darling. Actually, I was a little surprised, not only at who they chose or whom they chose, or however the correct spelling or pronunciation of things is. I believe it's who they chose to be on the task force, including the former Justice Minister here in Canada and the former Health Minister, Anne McClellan, and a number of other people that, again, that I was just very surprised that were part of, the task force at all. So
yeah, a few people from law enforcement, few people involved in mental health, some people involved with policy stuff.
You bet.
And the closest thing,
everything. All prohibition south.
Yeah, no cannabis person who's been involved in the community for years.
Yeah. No.
The only, I guess, from my understanding, the only bright lights is Susan Boyd.
Susan Boyd, that's our one and only bright light. You betcha.
Dr. Mark Ware, he's on there as well.
Dr. Mark Ware, I'm sorry, but
yeah,
Mark,
Dr. Mark Ware.
You know what, I did know, but you know what, Mark, again, I think still has trouble understanding that patients like us require as much medicine as we do. So I think in that respect, the task force, again, being made up of mainly prohibitionists and people who have never, ever consumed cannabis, let alone looked at it as a recreational substance like alcohol, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they'd have as many of those people on the task force that they do.
Yeah, I know. Well, I hope our guest tonight will be able to fill us in on what's happening in his neck of the woods, because I know here in Ontario it seems like the patients are under attack between the compassion clubs, the lounges, and everything else that's going on, eh?
It's a war out there, I'm telling you, Al. It is a war on people.
Yeah.
So, war on the cannabis consumer in general.
Yes, exactly. Well, talking about wars, I know our guest tonight has been involved with the cannabis community for quite some time, so
yes,
why don't you introduce him?
You bet. I would love for all our listeners to meet a really super friend of mine from the United States, and a fellow who's been quite busy himself in this movement, and he goes by the name of Gooey Rabinski. Welcome to a Pace Radio show on Lifestyle Radio, Gooey. And
thanks,
do
Alison.
your thing, doll. You betcha. Hey, listen, what I want to do, first of all, Gooey, is get you to tell people all about yourself and talk away about the Gooey that we know, darling.
Well, I've been a technical writer for corporate America for more than 25 years, which, I'm sure ages me, but
it's okay.
We're not telling.
Back in 2003, my brother took me to a music festival, a weekend music festival in Ohio, and I liked it. And I didn't know anything about really cannabis at the time. I lived by all those misperceptions and all the misinformation that's been thrown out for 80 years. But yes. It just was great, and it made me feel balanced, and I felt like I was a better person, and so I really questioned the government and everything I knew about cannabis, or didn't know, rather. So I started researching it. We have this wonderful tool called the internet. Even back then, there was a lot of information available, not nearly as much as today, but I was able to get some of the facts, and then I met people like you and Al, and you guys convinced me that medical was real. You told me stories that I wasn't getting in the mainstream press, that I wasn't getting from Time Magazine or CNN or Fox News, right. And it was extremely educational. And I guess that's what sparked a passion, really a frustration, quite frankly. I'm angry at the way governments around the world, Canada, United States, might be a local town like in Oregon or Colorado, where they already have adult use legal, and they ban sales even of medical in their community. And so I'd like to think that our mission is to get rid of the ignorance that pervades throughout society. That 80 years of prohibition is not easy. We're chipping away at that, and it's very difficult.
That is our mission, my friend. But I did want the listeners to know, at one point you were in Ohio, if I do remember correctly, and Ohio, just the last month, has actually legalized cannabis for recreational purposes as well. And what I was wondering, medical, and what I was wondering was, how do you feel about not being able to, if you were a patient in Ohio, not being able to produce your own medicine and garden yourself? I think
it sucks, and I knew Ohio would screw the pooch on this. Yes. I don't want to sound pompous or elitist or negative, but this is just another example of a relatively conservative state in the United States. I mean, Texas, when I was in California recently, folks were saying, oh, in Texas, don't you guys have medical? No, what we've got is CBD oil for epileptic children, okay? And that's wonderful, but that doesn't touch 98% of the people who need this medicine. So when I hear about a state that says, "Oh, look, we've got medical, we're progressive, but you can't even grow your own," I think it's crap. It's
very just disingenuous.
Yes, it's highly politicized, and the conservatives are really just trying to grab some tax dollars, and they don't give a shit about patients, unfortunately.
Gooey, seriously, my friend, you hit it right on the head, because as patients, I've been fighting this almost 3 decades, and I cannot believe that I'm still, to this day, in 2016, having been licensed here in Canada since 1994, almost, as I said, 20 years with a license.
Wow.
Bottom line, I still can't believe I'm on the street every day looking for an affordable source of this medicine. That is not right at all.
I was recently on the West Coast, and I was all over between Santa Cruz, California, up to Humboldt County. I spent about half my time up in Humboldt County.
Yeah.
And I think what you're hitting on, Alison, is that we need safe access for patients. It's safe access to quality medicine, laboratory tested. Because I had some wonderful organic medicine when I was in Humboldt County, and there really is a difference. You know, too many patients are smoking pesticides. They're smoking medicine that has not been properly flushed. You know, when you see it spark in your bowl, folks, it means there's synthetic nutrients in there.
Exactly.
And that the damn gardener didn't flush it because they put profits over patients. It's not good stuff.
And sadly enough, again, Gooey, my friend, that's exactly what patients like us deal with, and that's why we choose A, to garden for ourselves, and B, if we do choose dispensaries, we tend to look at those sorts of things. So again, I want patients to understand it's really important that you listen to things like this that you're saying, my friend. And I actually, again, was all over a number of your pages today, including the fact that you promote cannabis oil again in your area and all over the internet. You promote education on terpenes and different types of cannabinoids in the plant. These things are so important. Please, everybody, look up Gooey Rabinski on different forums and check him out from Instagram on back, because you, my friend, do some incredible work. You're a busy little beaver, that's for darn sure.
Well, thanks. You know, the challenge is always monetizing it, right? You know, we need to be able to pay the bills.
Exactly.
And that's one of the unfortunate characteristics, if you will, of our culture, of the cannabis and medical cannabis movements, is the bad guys have a lot more money. You know, the pharmaceuticals and the alcohol lobby and the government, the prohibitionists have deep pockets, and we should not underestimate that. And it's funny how we like to say, oh, you know, especially here in the States, my senator, the local politicians, the CEOs of the corporations, we like to think that they're stupid. But this is really a huge misperception. You know, these are people of entitlement who have graduated from Ivy League organizations of higher education, and these people are brilliant, quite frankly. The frightening part is if they're brilliant and they also don't give a damn about patients, okay?
Well,
if they're kind of an evil brilliant.
It's corporate America, Gooey, and that's exactly, again, for our listeners, I've actually left an organization known as LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, just recently. One of the reasons I left LEAP was strictly because of corporate involvement in some of this issue. And I felt, as an individual and a drug law reform advocate myself, and having done this for decades, I just felt that maybe speaking for them for the last 12 years, yes, certainly did both of us some good. But now I'm ready to spread my wings back out on my own and fight for human rights versus commerce. And that, my friend, is exactly what we deal with all of these big corporations and large pharmaceutical companies all over North America.
Right. You know, there's people of all stripes in the cannabis movement. And personally, I'm a capitalist. I believe in profit. I believe in the motive that potential profit gives me and others in our culture. But as soon as we think profits are more important than people or patients, I think that's where we run afoul.
There is a serious problem, my friend. You bet.
Yeah, for sure.
So I learned some amazing things in California. It was really quite an educational trip.
As an American, my friend, again, I was going to ask you, what are your views and how have your experiences been in the States, in Colorado and Washington, and the states that have legalized this for not just medicine, but for everybody? Tell our listeners.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've written for some companies out of Denver, and back in April for 420, I visited Portland for a couple of weeks. And I was considering a relocation to Portland, but of course, again, the career opportunity has to be there too, right? And I think there's plenty of career opportunities on the West Coast going with the Green Rush, but I just didn't find my particular fit when I was there career-wise. I fell in love with the city and the whole area. Oregon is just an amazingly beautiful state with some beautiful people in it, right? So then I started connecting with some people in Northern California, in San Francisco and Humboldt County, and we kind of hit it off. And so I'm doing technical writing for them, compliance documentation for cultivators and processors, because they've got deadlines, right? They've got deadlines in August, they've got deadlines in December, they've got, over an 18-month period in California. There's a variety of deadlines, but boy, I got to meet some amazing people. I sometimes call them mad scientists, right? Because they're just super smart, really smart people. I sat in the laboratory of a guy in Marin County who said, yes, you can get high off of pure terpenes because they did it. Yes, you can experience a psychoactive effect from topicals. I have some topicals here right in front of me that if I put 2 quarter-size spots, behind my knee or on my arm, I will get. I'll feel an extreme high. Actually, it's amazing how they're pushing the envelope in California.
Interesting. Again, I have to apologize to our listeners because, again, I'm not feeling very well, and I just realized I called terpenes. I'm making up my own words, Gooey, as we go along. I've been doing that all day today. That's
all right. That's why we have spell check, right?
I apologize, everybody. I apologize. I'm so sorry. But again, Gooey, it's really important that people learn these sorts of things. Just off topic, in one respect, what would the penalties for someone caught growing or plain possession what would they be in the United States regarding medical and then social? What would the difference be, Gooey?
It all depends on what state you're in. Most of the time it's going to be state law, right? Now, municipalities or townships and counties, they can have their own laws also. But most of the state laws are so prohibitive. Municipalities don't need to make their own laws, right? If they find a couple grams in some kid's pocket, they're going to lock them away, and it's going to cost $20,000 in legal fees, right? It's obviously a system designed to extract money and drop it into the hands of government or attorneys or whomever. Yeah,
and to certainly discriminate against those that are marginalized from different ethnicities, most definitely. That's the easiest thing for law enforcement.
Yeah, I'm not trying to evade your question. It's extremely detailed in some places.
Yes.
Boy, there's a guy who gets caught with 2 joints in his pocket, and like in Oklahoma or Arkansas, sometimes they'll go to jail for 20 years. It's just ridiculous.
Yes, I've read some.
So there's some stuff. But what frustrates me is that I have some friends in like Philly and New Jersey, and if we look at New Jersey's medical marijuana program with Governor Chris Christie there, who we all love and adore, right?
That's a whole other story.
Those people are paying between $500 $550 for an ounce of top shelf medicine that I'm sure is not even as good as the organic stuff that I was getting in Humboldt County. And I think that's
shocking.
It's an insult. It's an insult to patients.
Definitely.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Gooey, can I tell you though, too, my friend, that on that same note, I have friends all across Canada, and one of my friends in Newfoundland, again, pays $500 plus per ounce of cannabis that they use as well as medicine. So that, my friends, is all due to prohibition, and these are the reasons that we try to end things like prohibition and stop the nonsense and leaving the people alone. So as far as I'm concerned, again, that doesn't it's absolutely terrible to see patients of any sort being put in a position where affordability is the only reason that they're without their medicine.
Right.
I was telling people today that, bottom line, I've been without medicine now for 3 years, more steadily without than with. Even though Gary continues to offer, as my mom and my rest of my family, to buy and pay for everything I need, I am fighting to the point of where we just can't do that anymore. There's very little money left, for other things and for the rest of the family to do whatever they need to do for the rest of their lives. And I am absolutely furious that the government is forcing my family to spend thousands of dollars at a time in one sitting just to make my pain, my excruciating pain, livable.
Right.
That's absolutely unacceptable in this country.
Well, and the irony here is that when patients, and you, Al, and you, Alison, you know this very, very well. You've lived through this. When you get sick to a certain point that you can no longer work, you cannot hold your job, at that is the last time you can afford $400 or $500 an ounce for medicine.
Oh,
Exactly.
Big time.
It's just so the people who need it the most are the least able to afford it, and that is the sin against patients.
It certainly is, Gooey.
It is.
Oh, it's very
Okay,
frustrating.
guys. Well, I've got to jump in here, and it's break time. Time to pay
You
some
bet.
bills, okay?
Lots more to come.
I usually pick songs based on the person who's appearing on the show, and tonight's no different. And I'll explain that in a second. Tonight, when we go to break, we're going to hear from the Killing Time Band, okay? And we're going to play this song. It's Always 420. And the reason I'm playing It's Always 420 because it's always 420 when Gooey and I have gotten together.
That's true. It always has been.
It always has been.
For like 10 years, 10 or 11 years.
Yes, in Niagara Falls. So it's always 420. That's what we're going to play. And then and then Alison and I return with our guest, Gooey Rabinski. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.ca.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
When I awake, my clock says 4:20.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
This is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
I start my day with some good and plenty. You know some say that they don't trust my ways, but I trust my friends.
Hello and welcome back. We are the Pace Radio Show live here at lifestyleradio.ca, as well as we're live at Spreaker, TuneIn Radio, and at Shoutcast. And a big shout out to all those listening to us at other audio outlets, including a new one that will be carrying the Pace Radio show. And so I'd like to let everybody know that today, or actually yesterday, I was informed by our producer, Al Rapp of Lifestyle Radio, that his application to have us added to iHeartRadio has been accepted.
Yay!
Yes, exactly. We're back on iHeartRadio.
Yay!
And we were on there in the past, so we're back there again. If you are unaware of iHeartRadio, it's a large satellite radio network based in the USA. Some of you may have heard of it through award shows and concerts and stuff like that. So I'd like to thank all of my joint hosts here. That's Debbie, Allison, Kim, for everything they've done for the show, and Al Rapp for getting that application submitted. And talking about Al Rapp, this week on his show, the 420 Radio Show, along with his crew of Ross and Marcel and Lori and Chris, is their guest this week will be Debbie Stoltz-Giffen of Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, and she's also joint host here on the Pace Radio Show, and she'll be on there talking about the Mums Harvest Fest that they'll be having here at the end of July, I believe. And tonight on the Pace Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest author and writer, Gooey Rabinski, who has written a book called Understanding Medical Marijuana, and my joint host, Alison Myrden. But before we get into this book, because I know we're going to talk about this book when we come back from the break,
yes,
Gooey, I have a question for you. Can you give our listeners a little bit of information on iHeartRadio? Can you give us a little bit more? How big it is? Are you familiar with it?
It's very big. It's very big. My ex-wife used to listen to it, and I know it's very popular in the States. Personally, I'm a Spotify guy. I'm just kind of, cranking up my playlists all day long as I write and do research. But it's extremely popular in the States.
It is. Good. From my understanding, it comes available in your audio in your cars down there, like Sirius
sometimes.
Radio up here. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and you can certainly get it on most mobile and desktop devices. Yeah. So it's universally accessible.
Because last time
I dig that.
Yeah, because I tried to actually join there or something. This was a while back, and I couldn't get in because I was Canadian.
Well, you know how we Americans are, very picky. Very picky. We're kind of dicks about that, aren't we?
But I know you can go to their website. I know you can go to the iHeart website and get it there. Okay, I know you can do that, no matter where you're at.
Even if you're in Bombay, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Okay, all right, Gooey. I know Allison's got some questions about your book, so I'll let her have it.
You bet, guys. Hey, again, be sure to download away. We're all over iHeartRadio now, everyone. Wake up! Now, Gooey, darling, you wrote an incredible book, called Understanding Medical Marijuana. First of all, I would love if you told our listeners, A, what inspired your book. Obviously, you've been talking a little bit about that, but maybe you can get into some details as to what made you actually write a book and why, again. hey, you wrote about what you wrote about, whether it was social or medical. You can tell our listeners. And again, your cost of your book at the end of when you're done would be amazing, my friend. Talk away.
Well, fortunately I had written more than 30 books prior, but they were not about cannabis. This is the first book I've written about cannabis. They were books about consumer technology, personal data security, electric cars, home theater, stuff like that. And a friend of mine was moving some weight across the United States, and he got busted in the Midwest, and it was an ugly experience for him. And I just kind of made me think about prohibition, the roots of prohibition, and so I started doing some research just out of personal interest, but it of course was beneficial to my article writing at the time, and the freelance work I was doing.
Right.
And again, having written several books in the past, my goal was to write a relatively short book, and it's really not for us. It's for people who are not sure that cannabis is real medicine for patients.
Yes.
And I broke up the book into the chapters to explain, let's define medical. Let's define just cannabis as a science and as a medicine, and talk about the history of it. A lot of people, especially Americans, are not aware that prior to 1937, when federal prohibition went into effect in the states, that cannabis tinctures were on every pharmacy and drugstore shelf. They were a staple in American medicine cabinets, and if a child sprained their knee or something, we didn't give them a bare aspirin. They didn't exist back then. That was 1915, 1920 when that even started to be available on the market. We were as a society acclimated to using cannabis tinctures. It wasn't a recreational thing. People were not getting high off of these tinctures.
Nope.
It was a pure
medicine only.
Yeah, exactly. And so my eyes were opened by all of this, and I felt a natural impulse as a writer to share it with others. At first, I charged $5 for the book. It's an ebook available on Amazon, and then I decided to give it away because I thought I can help more people if I do that, and that's really what it's all about. So it's available at GooeyRabinski.com. You can download a PDF and get educated. But really, if you're already part of this culture, like I say, it's really
it's not for us.
Give it to your parents. Give it to your siblings. Give it to your neighbors and coworkers. Give it to the people who are skeptical. That's really who it's for. It's for the skeptics because, like here in the United States,
inform the non-believers.
Yes, we have roughly 10 states or so where it's going to be up as a ballot initiative for whether they adopt adult use legalization. It's the people who are not sure they're going to vote yes for it, or who are saying, no, I'm going to vote against it. I don't believe in this. And they buy into all the prohibitionist rhetoric. It's really those people I'm targeting. We have an opportunity in the United States, at least, to take this from 4 states and the District of Columbia and to, double or triple that over the next couple of years. And that's something that's very important for the momentum of this movement.
It sure is, doll. It sure is.
I can understand why you titled it "Understanding Medical Marijuana." Then, being that you're directing this towards people who are looking for the information, or to help people who may be curious as far as what's going on.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's good to inform the uninformed, Gooey. And again, education is the key, and that's what we've been basing all of our work on for decades.
Right. I think one of the problems, and I wrote a blog post about this, is that we preach to the converted. And it was attorney Alan Young in Toronto, where I was attending an event there, like 2005, 2006.
He's my lead attorney, actually. He's a
brilliant attorney, and he's down with the culture, and he believes in the efficacy of the plant for patients. And I just remember being at this event, and, everybody's jovial and happy, and, we're all coming together, and people are sharing great weed with me, and so I people are great. And I said, really great event, right? And Alan Young looked at me and he said, it is a great event. He said, too bad we're mostly just preaching to the converted, though. And it really made me think about that issue. So I think we all need to, we're like, what's Congress doing for us? What's Parliament in Canada doing for us? What are these various leaders doing for us? And we know that many of these leaders are not patient advocates, and they don't believe in the efficacy of the plant. So it's really up to us. We have to educate those around us.
Have you turned around and sent your book as the PDF to your members of Congress and stuff like that?
I actually have not. And I don't want to
certainly be a good idea, doll. Certainly be a good idea.
I'm not real.
Lobby anybody.
I'm kind of a troublemaker, and I don't do well with politicians. So I think.
Hey, then send it to me, and I'll send it, sweetie. Send it to me, and I'll send it.
It's there. It's a free PDF, and it can be sent far and wide. And I hope people do.
Well, that will get on right away, doll. That we will get on. Again, I also wanted to touch on a few other things, Gooey. You do a number of different things. As you had mentioned, you had written over 30 books that were not involved in this issue. So you are a seasoned author, my friend, as our listeners should know, but also, and a seasoned writer, but also you're a photographer and an instructional designer, and as we've come to know, a cannabis satirist, so bottom line, sweetie, I think, again, you wear many hats. Again, tell people about your photography, the different things that you take pictures of.
I've always enjoyed photography, and I've always had an SLR camera since I was in high school. Well, thank you.
Yes.
I enjoy it, and I think if you enjoy what you do, maybe you can produce art or content or media that's enticing to people. At least that's what I hope. Sure. The end goal is always to educate them about this plant and the efficacy for humans. If we look at wellness therapy and get beyond medical versus recreational and adult use, and it's good for everybody. And so if the photography can help pull people into that message, really, and where I got serious about photography was when I started freelance writing in about 2004, 2005, for magazines like Cannabis Culture and High Times.
You wrote for another Canadian Health Journal?
Yes,
the Cannabis Health Journal, Weed World. I remember at the time I turned it into a little game. I wanted to write for every cannabis publication in the world that was, of any merit and had a decent audience. And there was one in Spain. I think it was in Barcelona. And I couldn't write for them because it had to be in Spanish, and I don't write in Spanish. So.
What a shame! What a shame! I, like you, have done interviews all over the world, Gooey, but I've never actually had to write any of my interviews. But I do remember being in an Italian article at some point and laughing because the only words I could make out were my aim. So it's pretty funny, I know. But you know what? People all around the world, we get the gist of exactly what people like us do and why we do it. And again, I think just putting the message out there in even the slightest way sparks some sort of interest in people, and makes them wonder what more is involved and what exactly we're getting at and why we feel so strongly about this.
Right. It's very much a grassroots
I remember,
movement.
just on that same note, when I got out in the media years ago, over a decade, almost, again, decades ago, when I was doing interviews, I remember my only goal was to put it on every single dinner table all over the world, this issue, and make them talk about it. And that, my friend, is exactly what you're doing by books that you're writing, such as Understanding Medical Marijuana. These sorts of things. Gooey, again, the pictures you take, showing patients, not only consuming this plant, but, again, having no repercussions, no detrimental effects, and no dire health problems because of consuming this. You photograph us from start to finish at a number of events that you've been at, and never once have I ever seen any delirious or detrimental effects of cannabis, people using cannabis. So I really appreciate that you document things like that for us, Gooey. I really do.
I've
again,
seen people,
focusing
really
on medical and social cannabis is again just one thing that you do. Do you again make a regular, point of speaking to government officials in the state that you live in or that you happen to be residing in at the time? Do you talk to very many government officials at all?
No, again, I think I'm too belligerent to engage in mature dialogue with most politicians. I'm just kind of a troublemaker. I'm an advocate, but I'm not an activist. And in strict definition, I am not an activist. I'm an advocate.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're an advocate. You're about you get the information out there. You do the writing, and as you've commented on Twitter, people share.
They're all there, but I've lost the feed.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna go for a break here, guys. Okay.
Here, click there. Click.
Hey, we're gonna go for a break. We'll be right back. And we're gonna hear some more from the Killing Time Band and their song "It's Always 420." Then Alice and I will continue this conversation with Gooey Rabinski.
Well, it's not your fault.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Show here on lifestyleradio.ca.
You can't do anything.
Sorry, hi Garth. How are you?
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Let's burn another bowl out of my house to start a brand new day. The sun is shining. I am smiling and singing away.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
The National Task Force on Medicinal Cannabis is a group of not-for-profit organizations dedicated to influencing government policy with factual evidence. Our mission is to ensure that a constitutional medical program is developed that will address the concerns of all Canadians that require therapeutic cannabis. The task force is looking for dedicated people who are willing to contribute to our cause. We have formed this task force to foster a unified approach and focus on lobbying the federal government and Health Canada. We represent the combined expertise of thousands of patients with more than a decade of experience. As a task force participant, you, your business, or your group will have an opportunity to show that you care and offer your unique skills to promote the cause. If you would like to get involved, go to medcanataskforce.org. That's medcanataskforce.org and use the Contact Us link to get started. Help us help you.
Tune into the Pace Radio Show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Alison Myrden, along with myself, Al Graham, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at lifestyleradio.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck Seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
We sing at night, 'cause music is our life. The jam is tight. This is our night. You can only achieve.
Welcome back, and thanks for tuning into the Pace Radio Show. We are being broadcasted live here at lifestyleradio.ca, and you can also find us out other places as well. We're live at TuneIn Radio. Eventually, we'll be having our shows posted on iHeartRadio. We're available on YouTube. The list goes on and on, so you'll find us. Tonight at our breaks, we featured the Ontario-based band, the Killing Time Band, and their song "It's Always 420." And as I explained earlier, it's quite often when it was the time of the year that I got to meet up with Gooey. So if you enjoyed tonight's music, I'd like to suggest that you check out the Killing Time Band on YouTube or at killingtimeband.com.
You know, I have some of their songs in my Spotify playlist. I have several public playlists on Spotify. You have to be a Spotify subscriber, kick them $10 a month. But I have all these cannabis-centric playlists, and I do have some Killing Time. Yeah, you introduced me to that band, and I added them to some of the playlists. All right.
That's right. Now, when it comes to Spotify, I'm not joined there, but I know you always send out. You're looking for requests. You got any songs that you can add to the list? So how can people find you at Spotify to find out the music?
Just search under Gooey Rabinski. I'm Gooey Rabinski on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, everything.
It's like 5 likes.
All right. Allison. No, doesn't look like she can hear me. Okay.
Technology.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
She's not here. So. All right, so they can just find you anywhere with your name, Gooey Rabinski, right?
Yeah,
exactly. It's Gooey.
Rabinski. Yes, I'm your favorite Jewish accountant. So there you go.
Okay, now just before we went into the break, Allison had asked you some questions about state law.
Yeah, and I have quite a few opinions on that because for the past several years, forever, I've lived in a prohibitionist state, whether it's Ohio or Texas. And I'm in Austin currently, and so in exploring Portland, Oregon, and exploring Northern California, I've decided that basically I really can't do my job very effectively if I'm in a prohibitionist state. So I am going to relocate to Northern California, to Humboldt County, to Eureka, Humboldt County, so I can be at the center of the action. I need it for photography. I need it for writing and interviews. I just need to be in a legal state. But it's sad because the vast majority of patients and adult users in the United States and in all of North America are not in places like Northern California or Oregon or Seattle, where they have much better safe access to quality medicine.
Right. Because safe access is what people need to be able to get to.
Exactly. It's got to be high quality medicine, and this has really been illustrated to me by some of the farmers, and they're really farmers. They're not people growing 12 or 15 plants, in their basement. These are cultivators who have hundreds of plants, often on multiple farms. And I'm really, really impressed at how Northern California and Oregon embrace organic. For the last month or so, the only flowers I've smoked or vaped have been organic. Most of the time outdoor organic, sometimes indoor, and of course they use the greenhouses and supplemental light so they can get 2 or 3 crops per season in Northern Cali. There's a lot of ways of approaching it, but it's really taught me the value of pure medicine, it does not have pesticides, that never had synthetic nutrients, so it doesn't have to be flushed, okay? And I'm not, we're all kind of desperate pot smokers, right? So be we patients or adult users, and I'm not putting down hydro or anything, but I've you and I have been smoking weed and vaping it and eating it and using various cannabis-based products for decades. We've had shitty weed, we've had good weed, we know good medicine, especially sick patients like you and Alison. And I'm just very, very impressed by the quality of truly organic weed with righteous cultivators who give a damn. They give a damn about whether there's efficacy for patients. They have friends and family members who have PTSD and MS and epilepsy and Crohn's and arthritis and severe anxiety and depression. And they see how it helps their loved ones and their friends and family. And so they care about the quality of their medicine. And that's where I want to be. That's the only kind of people I want to hang out with. That's the kind of people I want to write about and interview, and I want to take photos of their gardens because, there's some good energy there, and they really are putting patients over profits.
Now, when it comes to your photos of the gardens, as you just mentioned, and talking with patients and stuff, do you run into situations where some patients, maybe don't want their garden shown, something that might be looked at as far as somebody doing window shopping?
Yeah, you have to be very careful. You purposefully avoid license plates and numbers on homes, addresses. There's some little tricks that you just have to do that, because if we're trying to help these patients or cultivators or processors, we certainly don't want to get them in trouble, right? And here in the state, it can be deceiving sometimes, because in places like Northern California or Portland or Eugene, Oregon, it just kind of starts feeling like the entire country is legal, and they're so far away from Washington, D.C. that we forget that at the federal level there's people going to jail for decades for this. And the trick is getting that culture and that environment that we find on the West Coast across North America, right? Every person living in North America, if they're sick and they desire to grow a plant, back to Alison's point, you should be able to self-sustain. And there's a lot of people, especially on the West Coast, who are very much behind the idea of patient independence and patient self-reliance, and not forcing people like the state of New Jersey to drop $500 or $550 for an ounce of OG Kush, that's going to last them maybe only a week or two in the case of severely ill patients. Yeah. It's just, the people, you guys down there, like in California, when you go down to California and they go on about all the organic gardens and how it's, that's the way to go. It is. And people have been very successful with organic gardens. And I know that I have had, one fellow in the past who helped me out with organic gardens, and he says he can always get as much off of an organic garden versus one that was grown with synthetic foods. Right, and I realize, especially on the black market, that there is this idea of bag appeal, and I get that. And people need to put food on the table, right? They need to earn money, and they don't want the distributors and dealers saying, "Oh, your weed looks like crap." We don't want that. Yeah. But I think it can be very deceptive. I mean, some of the outdoor organic I've seen that I've smoked for weeks on end in Northern California it's some of the highest quality medicine I've ever had. Yet the bag appeal, it gets sometimes a little scraggly with outdoor organic, right? But it sure can. Yeah. A good trim job. It's the most impressive medicine I've ever had. It makes me. I've had offers here in Austin for black market herb, sometimes very potent, very really knock you out. And I've turned down those offers because I don't want mystery weed anymore. I don't want the risk of pesticides. Yeah. I just don't trust it anymore. I'd rather go without. Than now that I've had organic straight from the cultivator, and I feel bad because I know most people in North America don't get the opportunity to say, hello, Mr. Cultivator, I would like to, I'd like to buy some of your high quality medicine from you.
Yeah.
They don't get that opportunity, and we can't even trust some of the stuff in the dispensaries here in the States, right?
Well, one of your articles, I believe that you wrote about concentrates. Did it not? You wrote one about the concerns to deal with pesticides in the concentrates.
I probably did. I did almost 200 for Waxy over 10 months, so I kind of forget some of the ones I wrote.
Yeah, I can understand that. 200 articles in that short of time. Holy smokes!
It was educational. It was very educational, and it was a fun project. But back to what you were asking during the break, I recently signed up with a relatively new media outlet out of New Zealand called herb.co. And they are, they're very aggressively pursuing articles on a very wide variety of topics. And so I'm going to be writing for them. We're going to be focusing on series of articles and keeping those articles short. Sometimes when I was writing for Waxy, I wrote several articles that were between 2,000 and 3,000 words in length, and people just don't have the time to read that, quite honestly. We've got to. We talk about educating people, but how do we do that? How effectively do we execute on that? And really, so with herb.co, there'll be shorter articles, maxing out at about 500 words. Try to put in some really beautiful photography because, hey, eye candy, everybody likes eye candy. The photos really attract people. So we find that no matter how good the words are and how appropriate the length, if we don't have good photos, we're just not going to attract people.
That's right. Yeah. And you say if it gets too long, it becomes more like a book instead of an article.
Well, that's why we're going to do things as a series. For example, we've got a series planned on PTSD, and I want to focus a lot on veterans. There's a real focus on this in Northern California. There's a large veteran community there, and obviously a large cannabis community. So they go together very well. So if you think about if we had a series of 3 to 5 articles that were about 500, 400 to 500 words in length each, then people can bite off as much as they want, right? They can read one of those articles, or they can read all 3 or 4 of those articles. But we're not putting all that together into a single 2,800 word article and saying, here you go, read as much as you want. I think it's a little more effective if we chop it up that way.
Yeah, because it when you can take it right to the point, I guess is what if you're only doing it in 500, 600 words, it gets right to the point right away and able to explain everything.
Yeah, and quite frankly, there needs to be a certain practicality to it. How many 3,000-word articles can you crank out in a week? How many 500-word articles can you crank out in a week? And if we can give the same basic knowledge in a more effective manner to readers and patients and skeptics, then we're doing a much better job, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now let's see what else can we talk about on your okay, we've talked about your book, your new writing here with herb.co. What can you tell us about them?
I'm really picky about who I work with, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I've probably walked away from more media outlets in the past 6 months than anything else, and I want to work with a media outlet that has flexibility and a concern. They focus on both adult use and medical, and I like that. I mean, my primary focus is patients, and I love the chemistry of it, right? Mm-hmm. Talking about cannabinoids and terpenes and the entourage effect, and it gets extremely complicated. When I was in Northern California, and I was talking to a guy who's the owner of a processing center. And he makes some amazing products, and we sat there for an hour and 15 minutes, and I could barely keep up with the guy. He's so brilliant. And he was just telling me about how they strive. Every element of their process strives to maintain the terpene and cannabinoid profile of the plant. Because they know it's so important in the entourage effect, and it's so important for efficacy. When we, and Alison can talk at length about this, when we isolate THC or when we isolate CBD, I'm not saying there's not efficacy in that, but there's a whole lot of efficacy that we're leaving behind because we don't have, sometimes it's called full spectrum, sometimes it's called whole plant or full plant. It's all the same idea. It's that if we start selectively pulling out terpenes and cannabinoids, there are very valid medical uses for that, but we can't act like in kind of a pharmaceutical mentality that's going to be 100% effective for every patient with cancer or every patient with MS. It's ridiculous. We found through various studies that like epileptic children, like who have Dravet syndrome, they're having 400, 600, 800 micro seizures per day. Now, if they take CBD only, which I can understand a patient who wants to do that because you don't necessarily want your 4-year-old getting high as a kite, right, and confused and disoriented. I fully understand where they're coming from. But through experimentation, these parents have found, there was a study done, I'm not sure if it was in America or Israel. We can't do human trials in the United States anyway. But this clinical trial found that about a third of those children get solid efficacy from CBD only, meaning that 2/3 of those children do better with some THC in the mix. How much? It depends on the patient, right?
Yeah.
But we found that think about that, 2/3 of the patient population, based on the scant research that we have, I agree, it's not enough research, are not getting the full benefit. One parent on the East Coast even reported that his child experienced a slight increase in seizure activity on CBD only, which then the seizure activity went way down when they added some THC into the mix.
And would that all come to the synergy? I can't even pronounce the word. of needing all the different components within the plant in order for it to all to work.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And one thing we really have to keep in mind is subjective efficacy. What works for one patient does not necessarily work for another patient. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they're the exception, but there are people who, if they consume a sativa, smoke it or vape it or eat it, they'll go to sleep. They'll get couch lock. And if an indica will get them revved up, just like a sativa would do to you or me, probably.
Yes.
And it's kind of unique. And I was talking to some people in Portland at the Northwest Cannabis Club, and there were some amazing activists there who had kind of done their own personal research. And, it's anecdotal at best, quite frankly, but it was still very interesting. And they were finding that, like in ADHD patients, if they had been given a particular pharmaceutical drug, that they were more likely to have that flip where the sativa would affect them like an indica and vice versa. There's all this information. We just don't have a clue. We are so ignorant of this plant and how it affects humans right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt that they've been holding all the information back, anything that they've been finding, and not allowing the research over all these years.
Exactly.
It's a lot of people have suffered needlessly. Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing the battle up here in Canada. We just had in Toronto, they had 43 dispensaries raided. They said it was a danger to community because it wasn't. They said some of the packaging wasn't properly labeled.
Oh, geez. I think it just shows the prohibitionists, they know the game they're playing, and they're just against this. I remember I wrote an article for Waxy last year, and it was when the Responsible Ohio initiative, everybody was trying to get that passed in Ohio. Right. And basically I was saying, look, folks, just because we got 4 legal states in Washington, D.C., and, some good stuff going on, this is when the prohibitionist forces are going to really start coming out because they see our movement, our culture making progress, and they're like, ooh, not on their clock. These are evangelicals, very conservatives, Luddites, people who want to embrace 20th century thinking, who want to embrace an alcohol culture and a tobacco culture. And I think those people should be able to embrace that culture. Likewise, we should be able to embrace our culture, and they should not be dictating whether we can grow a plant because we have glaucoma or MS. It's just ridiculous.
And that was what Alison and I sort of touched on earlier, where none of our culture is even being involved in our task force that was formed up here for our legalization. None of them. Yeah, exactly. Not good. We don't like that at all. Talking about laws and things in the States, there's been some stuff I've been seeing floating around on social media. Some people have questioned whether it's true or not. And that, what are your ideas on this? Is the DEA going to be rescheduling cannabis down there?
They might. We see so much of this on social media. There's so many rumors and such that, and I tend to get cynical about it, quite frankly. We know that the DEA has a very proven track record of not being pro-patient and not being pro-cannabis and not allowing research, even objective research that could show efficacy or lack thereof. They're just not behind it. I can say on the topic of scheduling that going to Schedule 2 is not necessarily a good thing. If everybody just thinks, oh, great, they're going to take it from 1 to 2, and that's wonderful. Really what we need to do is deschedule it. It should not be scheduled whatsoever. But, if we think, okay, it's political, there needs to be negotiation, really if we're going to keep it scheduled, it needs to go to Schedule 3. There are actually some blockades that come up in Schedule 2 that make certain types of research even more difficult. And Schedule 2 is not a panacea. It's not like, oh, great, we've solved our problems, Schedule 2, we're going to do tons of research. It would not work that way. Because
I noticed Clinton has talked about, she said something earlier on about rescheduling it when Sanders was talking about legalization. We have a very active person up here by the name, with the handle Electropig, and he likes to use he likes to make sure everybody knows to repeal cannabis laws.
Yes. I've seen him on Twitter. He has an interesting avatar.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, he does. But yeah, that's basically, repealing it. Otherwise, legalization, especially what we're seeing coming from our government at this end. Look, some people are calling it sort of like a rejigged prohibition, because there's going to be so many restrictions that'll be on it.
Well, it's like, I'm doing a lot of technical writing in Northern California for it's a compliance documentation. So if you have a cultivator, and whether they got 50 plants or 600 plants, if they want to go legal, they have a fixed time frame in which they have to submit certain applications. And sometimes it gets, fairly pricey because there's fees for all of that. But the trick is helping these people comply with this regulation. It's exactly what you're talking about, okay? If the law passes and everybody thinks, oh, great, it's legal now, end of story. And not at all, because then regulations have to be formed. Right. And often the conservatives and the prohibitionists will say, okay, you got legalization either through a ballot initiative typically or whatever, through the state legislature, and we're going to put in such restrictive regulations that it's really just going to screw it up for everybody. And that's happening all over the United States.
It is, eh? Well, I know that during our when our government made the announcement on the news there last week, they mentioned Colorado, but for some reason they seem to me as if they're directing towards the Washington model, which would, from my understanding, doesn't allow you to grow.
In Washington State, that's correct. In Washington, D.C., in fact, that's the only way they can legally have medicines, if they grow their own up to a certain limit. But things are really kind of messed up in Washington State right now as they phase out medical. It's having a pronounced economic effect. I had a friend who ran a testing lab, and they synthesized terpenes, and we're talking high-end chemistry here with $1 million equipment. And he was making a nice living, and everything was going along swimmingly. And they're phasing out medical, and it looks like the company is going to fold. They had to let him and his coworkers go. Wow. They got laid off. So
would they still not want that information for the commercial end of it all? Is that still not important to the person who's purchasing it?
It definitely is. And I don't know how that particular testing lab was licensed in the state of Washington. I don't know all the details, unfortunately. But I do know it's having an economic impact among people I know who are trying to raise families and earn a living.
Yeah. Because they, I would think that they may still want that as important information to let the consumer know what they're purchasing, just like they have, on food products.
Right. Well, and the testing is certainly not going to go away, but there are problems with that also. There was a testing lab in Oregon and another one in Northern California that were found to basically, let's say you were a cultivator, and the market value of your crop increases if it has a higher percentage of THC, right? Now, you and I know that doesn't necessarily mean it's better medicine, but we're talking, and there's a lot of diversion out of these legal markets too, okay? There's stuff getting sold and transported out of state, and, we're never going to get rid of the black market. But, yeah, we really need to know what's going on with this medicine. But anyway, one testing lab in Oregon, another in Northern Cali, if you were a cultivator and you paid them an additional fee, they would increase your THC percentage. So it could go from, say, 16% to 23% with a little money. Wow. Not a good thing. Yeah, not a good thing, right? And this is in the promised land. This is in Northern California, north of San Francisco. This is in Oregon. Yeah, no, there's always going to be bad guys, and it's unfortunate that the prohibitionists will point them out and try to make it look like we're all like that, right?
Yeah.
But it happens.
I know there's some questions that occur occasionally here on our readings that we're getting from the licensed producers. Some people question whether the numbers are how accurate they are, because they're on tests done away from independently are showing lower numbers. So there is some question there for our end of it all too. So.
Yeah, I mean, the whole green rush, especially in the United States, and I know it's very different in Canada, but the economy has been crap to mediocre since 2009 when everything crashed on Wall Street. Lots of people who are making six figures, master's degrees, really, moderately successful people were suddenly in need of a career shift, right? They lost their positions, companies folded, it got pretty ugly. And so the green rush is attracting a lot of entrepreneurs. And I would like to say most of them are very well-intentioned people who have a good perspective on things. They're ethical business people. They treat others the way they would like to be treated. But there will always be a certain element of people who say, hey, I kind of miss that old six-figure salary. Let's go get rich in the cannabis industry.
They got their mortgages to pay still.
They do in their defense. But they unfortunately they don't understand the plant. They don't really strive to understand the plant. Efficacy issues are not really their concern. And I'm not saying they have a spare 20 hours a week to do research on that and read stuff from people like you and me. But we say, okay, we've got 4 states and the District of Columbia here in the U.S. that are legal. But when we look at the pushback coming from conservatives in terms of regulations and how do we realize this legality, right? How do we make that happen for all parties involved? Unfortunately, some of those parties just really don't care about patients. I look at the LDS Church in Salt Lake City. They opposed their state's medical marijuana, and you say, well, wait a second, you're a church, you're supposed to, they're one of the biggest denominations in the world. They've got like 14 million members or something. I wrote a couple articles on my blog about it. Why would they deprive of those 14 million? Gosh, how many have Crohn's? How many have epilepsy? How many have cancer? How many are going to get cancer? And that church is telling those millions of members, this is a bad thing. Don't do it. And they're investing real money and effort in preventing the citizens of their state and millions of their members from taking advantage of cannabis as a wellness therapy. It's really sad.
And it's all that propaganda that has sunk in their heads that was put out there that they tend to believe. And it's unfortunate out of thousands and thousands and thousands of years that this plant's been on this world, that 100 years of prohibition has done so much damage.
It has, unfortunately, and we're just chipping away at that prohibitionist mindset. Again, getting to the skeptics who are like, gosh, in November I have to vote on adult use cannabis. And gosh, do I really want that to be legal? Do they believe the prohibitionist rhetoric that it's bad for the kids in the neighborhood, that it's bad for society, that it brings in criminal elements? Or do they believe that this is real medicine and that there's this thing called the entourage effect and that people see cancer go into remission? You got your life back from Crohn's, I can't imagine what your life would be like without cannabis, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure I would have been addicted to some opiate drug because of the fact that I left the hospital in 2003 with a bottle of morphine pills, and 3 years later I returned it back to the pharmacy and I've been using nothing but cannabis. So,
you got your life back.
I got my life back, exactly. And I'm sharing all what I can learn with others, so they know.
Yeah.
And there was a fellow who I knew as a young lad that, today he was in surgery because he deals with Crohn's. And it was unfortunate, but, that's what it came to surgery. But we'll see what happens down the road for him.
And, listeners who would like to learn more about your story, and it's part of what early on in my freelance for cannabis career really shaped my perception of this plant and how it can help patients. And there's it's a pretty long one. It's about 2,600 words. It's up on my blog, and it's when did we do that? 10 years ago?
10 years ago, yes, we did that 10 years ago.
Were we in Hamilton? We were in Hamilton
at the Up and Smoke Cafe,
right?
Which is no longer there. And,
sadly, but
we did the interview there, and it was great. And here we are years later, and it's still being shared around, and people are still reading it.
I think then, we got high on a school bus, or it was a Canadian thing at the time. I was like, these crazy Canadians.
Exactly. Okay, Gooey. Well, we're getting down to the bottom of the hour here. We've run a little bit long, so which has been very nice to be able to get to talk to you about this.
Thanks. I always appreciate the opportunity.
And we always appreciate you coming on and talking to us. I should let you give a shout out here to let everybody know where they can find your book, where they can get as a free download PDF, as well as your articles that you write.
Sure. You can go to GooeyRabinski.com. That's my blog, and that's where you can download the PDF of the book. There is, I'm just starting this relationship with herb.co, so I have not submitted any articles to them yet, but that's going to start happening within the next week. And of course, I'm going to be focusing on the photography, and I'll be able to do a whole lot more of that when I'm in Northern California and have access to gardens and patients and amazing processing facilities. But then I'll be providing stock photos to Stockpot Photos out of Beverly Hills. Ophelia Chong there, she's amazing. She's got an energy that few humans have, and I'm really excited to work with them. So, I just want to try to get as much good photography and writing out there to try to educate people. Again, my personal focus is kind of the fact that we've got a lot of decisions to make as states when in ballot initiatives this fall, and I just hope people make informed decisions regardless of what they decide.
That's right. Well, as a patient and as an advocate, Gooey, I'd like to thank you for everything that you do. You've been writing some terrific articles. I'm a person who shares that information, and I've been sharing it for a long time. It's the stuff that you've been writing and making sure that people are reading it, and people are reading it, and they are understanding medical marijuana just exactly as your book is titled. So, and because of you, thank you very much for everything you've done.
You bet. Thanks again for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody that I will be back next week with my joint host, Kim Cooper, and her guest. You can find Pace on Twitter at Pace Radio, and you can also like the Pace Radio Show on Facebook, and we can be found on the web at pace-online.ca. Thank yous go out to our sponsor, the friendly and helpful folks at BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario, and CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler, and Al Rapp of lifestyleradio.ca. Also, a big thank you to our guest, Gooey Rabinski, the author and writer of Understanding Medical Marijuana, and my joint host, Alison Myrden, who wasn't able to get back on. I'd like to thank her for, first half of the show, she was here. Plus, a thank you to you, our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, and good night.
Oi.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, and good night.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.